this. Donna, you started with doing virtual lessons before coronavirus came into play, so before all the shutdowns. So you were actually positioned to be teaching virtually anyway already.
Yes.
Michael, you have Broadway in Paris, and now you have Broadway in Paris, à chez vous, right? Uh, and that's you're teaching lessons. I think you teach voice lessons also, but I've seen your dance lessons come
Yeah.
across my feed, and they're wonderful. Edward, you actually work in digital publishing, so you have a whole like thing with educators working online and how you're getting people prepped for that. And Matthew, your classes went to virtual semester at the end of March. So what?
Also, if I could just interject, Matthew is the only person I have never ever taught live.
Oh, interesting. Okay, that's amazing. Um, and so, and actually, Matthew, did you start with Donna before everything went to virtual anyway?
Yes, I want to say it was like maybe 2 or 3 weeks before. I remember, Don, do you remember you coached me for Let's Misbehave for that summer stock audition, which I
Yeah.
went to, but I think that was the end of February. So we might, yeah. And
Okay,
then
so
we,
a
yeah,
few, but it wasn't like you had to switch over with her anyway.
no.
Um, and so if I could hear from you guys or start a discussion about just what challenges you've had, what hesitations you've had, what's worked really well, what you've seen as benefits. Don, I'm going to start with you because you're the host.
Well, the benefits are I get to teach people like Matthew, who there is no way he would be my student and I would be able to teach him without the virtual teaching, because he contacted me and he's not going to be coming to New York anytime soon. And not just him, but I have people all over the world now that I am able to teach. And I also find that um, even teaching my New York people now virtually, because of course the whole shutdown, um, it's a benefit in that everything now is virtual. Let's say Broadway, we're opening up next week. You still don't hear the actual live sound. You're hearing sound through a speaker. Everybody's microphoned, everybody's through a speaker. Even the Met mics their stage. So you're not. There's hardly any place where you're listening to live voices. The advantage of me teaching everybody virtually is I'm hearing the sound that just about everybody's going to hear on their crappy little iPad, iPhone, whatever, headphones, whatever they're using. So it's an advantage in that I'm tweaking a sound that everybody else is kind of going to hear, as opposed to the live sound in front of me. So that's an advantage. I mean, besides the advantage of being able to teach anybody anywhere, which is thrilling me. That's wonderful.
So talking about going on around the globe, I'm going to switch over to Michael on this one. What was the process like for you adjusting to virtual and all of that?
Mine was kind of a fluke. Our first day in quarantine, we were actually in lockdown. Like we were not allowed to leave our apartments and go further than a kilometer. I was supposed to teach anyway that day. And I thought to myself, well, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to teach right here in this apartment. So I went on Facebook Live and started teaching my class. To my great surprise, 80 people came, and then I did the next day, 90 people came, and then I did the next day, 100 people came. And what I discovered, very similarly to Donna, was that I was now reaching people all over the globe. I was getting people from Taiwan and Fiji and Italy and Spain and Portugal and France and New York and Washington, D.C. Um, so that was really, really cool. And it has definitely expanded my reach to people. And I also found I was teaching dance that it created some sort of comfort and security for people because they were in their home and they were not in a studio being judged by other people. They were safe in their own space. So it's really, really been quite healing to many people. I I teach some voice lessons online, and the same thing with Donna. It's so great to have. I'm teaching really my Paris people, uh, but I am so fortunate to get to study with Donna, to continue studying with Donna virtually. So that's really a blessing. I think we need to really prepare ourselves for this in the future because I don't really foresee it changing anytime soon. So I think it's wonderful that we're doing stuff like this and we're all embracing this change. And it will return, I think, at some point. But I think it's a wonderful opportunity to experience things that, as Donna said, some people will never get to New York. Some people will never get to Paris. And this way, you can study with whoever really you want now.
I agree. I just attended a virtual camp, and I was telling Donna before we started that um, it was so nice with the choreography because, like, there were teenagers in this camp, but also teachers, and so I was in the teacher group, and we were learning the choreography that the kids were learning, and let me tell you, it was hard, and it was so nice because all the teachers, we just turned our cameras off. But I know we were all dancing in our rooms, but like I need a whole minute just to get it figured out before I turn my camera back on. And it was nice. It was really nice. So, Ed, how about you? I know that in the more education space, I'm gonna head into Ed and Matthew on this. On the education space, what are you finding that teachers are struggling with, or that they're needing your help with in transitioning into digital?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are a number of factors that we kind of see. Obviously, I work particularly with the education system in the United States, and obviously they've now transferred millions of students to a digital learning environment. So, in terms of what we see with teachers who have a strong understanding of the content knowledge, have a foundation in technique, which, in the situation with Donna, from an in-person to virtual environment, you can still kind of reach your students and see results. But I think, and going on from a point that Michael made in particular is like what we're seeing from teachers is they're saying, look, my students who were typically more nervous, who were underperforming and when we were observing them in this kind of digital environment feel much more comfortable, and they're seeing those kind of like academic gains. They're seeing growth in that environment for those kids in particular who are struggling, who would potentially struggle more so in a direct, like observed environment. I mean, obviously, it's difficult. The difference between in-person and virtual is exceptionally difficult. But I think what we're seeing is that students are still having gains. They're still, um, understanding key concepts, and it's just opened up the world for those students, I think. And again, I won't go into too much detail. I mean, obviously, access to technology is always a really big thing, and we're fortunate that we're in an environment where we can actually use the tools we have, even if it's our little phone or, a lot of us today have cobbled together just some technology to get through here. But I feel like strong teaching transfers and transcends kind of the physical and virtual environment, in my opinion.
100%. I think it was when we were talking this week, it was a very clear difference between like the introvert learners and the extrovert learners. The introvert learners did very well. People that they had never heard talk before, they were like, my student, I never heard two words from them in class, but now I'm like, bah, 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 bah. And they're doing great. And then the extroverts are the ones that are like, oh, I don't really know what to do because I don't have people around me. It's really an interesting dichotomy.
And I was, to be honest, like coming into today's session because I hadn't sung in front of people for, a really long time, 5 years now, just to be in my own home and to explore. I mean, obviously I've worked with Donna for a long time and very comfortable, but singing in a group environment, you get nervous. And I feel like here I felt a little safer and, you're a little bit more removed for sure.
And Matthew, what about you? What have you taken away from moving to digital, and what do you find helpful or still problematic? Whatever, however you feel is right for the conversation.
So for college and for like if you're in the performing arts and your major is very hands-on, it's been actually pretty difficult. I think the students feel it, the teachers feel it. I think it's just about doing the best job of still learning the material. For my scene study class last semester, obviously we couldn't do Zoom scenes, so we did self-tape. So they gave everybody a scene and a song, and we just had I had a roommate, so she was my reader, and then I did a song and a scene, and we got feedback that way. And so I thought that was a very clever way of still getting the one-on-one or critique about the acting and the singing. But yeah, it's just tough because for me, dancing is my big thing that I need to work on. And when I do a Zoom class, I don't necessarily learn as much as if I would in person, because I need more corrections or I need more help. It's just tough. It's just tough. It's getting better, I think, as we're learning how to. This is going to be a long-term thing, and teachers are now prepared to do it. But yeah.
Yeah, 1,000%, 1,000%. It's a new direction completely,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't override live. It's really meant to supplement, and right now we're figuring out like where does it work in supplement and where does it not. And I think it's a good point that if you're someone who's needing additional correction or just you want to have that actual observation, I see that.
I would say it's definitely challenging because you were talking about dance. I'm such a touchy teacher, I'm putting my hands on the students' shoulders or hips or their feet and saying, no, it's here, it's here, it's here, because it is such a tactile, art form, dance. And singing, also, I think it's more challenging. I don't know if Donna finds that, because we're not getting as many physical cues, because the screen doesn't tell us as much as life, and also people walk in with certain type of energy and we read on that. And that's the challenge that I find. Like not the touching and like, can I really feel through the screen?
Well, that's a good question. Donna, what do you think about that? Do you feel people's energies through the screen? Like, when you have a new person that day, like, can you tell where they are? I know you can live because you've walked me off many a ledge. But can you tell when people come onto the Zoom how they are?
Actually, I can to a large degree. I can feel the energy. I could, for the most part, the face is pretty close up. So I can see the expression on the face. I could see if somebody's tired. I could see if somebody's, how they're doing that. I have to say that I really don't have a problem with that. I don't feel as much of the aura of the person, let's say, but I can catch pretty much where the emotional state is and what they're doing. I don't see as much of the body as I would like to. And rarely, but every once in a while, like Michael, I put hands on. I like to put hands on. It's like, you know what? Let's just try this. Let's just, do you mind my trying a little this, that, or the other thing, which obviously I can't do, but I get around it. Sometimes if I'm finding somebody's a little bit too tight in their abdominal area, I'm like, take your fingers and, just kind of massage that little abdominal area while you're singing, which I would actually physically do myself for a person. But in terms of sensing their energy, yeah, I'm pretty good at feeling where they're at the moment, I have to say.
And even like using a case example, like from a physical perspective in the lesson today, when you were noticing where my tongue was going, that was something I did not expect in a virtual lesson. I was like, how, you don't see yourself outside of yourself. And I'm like, oh, really honestly didn't realize that you would have that level of clarity in like, oh, the tongue is moving in a slightly different way. So that really surprised me in today's session, the detail that you can get out of the virtual environment. So.
I'd like to turn the conversation a little bit because we have all gentlemen from today, and can we talk a little bit about Donna working with men in the falsetto and the chest voice? And I know for ladies, and we talked about this with the ladies earlier. There's so much difference of what you think versus what you feel versus what's actually happening outside, and so maybe a little bit for our viewers about that and as a discussion with the men.
Yeah, it's a little bit more difficult with men because the falsetto, in many cases, is very separate from the chest voice. Now, that can happen with women as well. They can have a head voice that's really separated from the chest voice. But with men, because they have that break at puberty, it's a real separation. It's a real difference one from the other. And finding the right falsetto like sound that will combine with the chest voice. In many cases, it has more chest voice in it than you would think, or vice versa. The chest voice will have more falsetto in it than you would think. Now, as we discovered with Ed's lesson, the falsetto that he thought was a falsetto was so separated that it wasn't even a falsetto that one can use to combine with the chest voice. What we got into was a very different kind of a mix. And again, he felt it all like a chest voice. Now, most men, when you get the right chest voice in the falsetto, they feel it's too false to be a real sound that they can sing with. Now, Michael's shaking his head because Michael's real big on that one. He comes up with a sound that is just really good combination. He's like, but that's false. I can't sing with that sound. So it's the polar opposite of what Ed experiences. So Michael's feeling more of a falsity to the sound, and Ed's feeling more of a chest voice to a very similar sound. So if you guys can talk about that, maybe talk about how what you're hearing as opposed to what you hear back on a I'll ask you, Michael, because I know you've done this, what you hear back on a recording.
Well, I have to say the turning point for me was actually right there in your apartment. I had set up an exercise, and I said, "Oh no, I can't sing that. That's totally disconnected. I would never sing that in public." And by chance, another student had already come in and sat down, and you said to her, I don't remember what it was, "How does this sound? Does it sound disconnected?" And I sang the exercise, and she said, "No, that's totally connected." And I thought, okay, well, if I thought Donna was lying to me just because she loves me, that is proof, that it's the truth. So I said, all right, I'm going to totally not trust my ear and just go by what she's saying to me. Because it did feel inside my own body, it felt like it felt completely disconnected. And I think this is my perception of the falsetto. I think of so many boys in my generation. I don't know about the generation now. That sound was like kind of a taboo. It was like feminine sounding, and it didn't sound manly and big and strong and Broadway and all that stuff. And learning that with Donna and Cornelius transformed my voice. And they are the only people that I have found that really work with the head voice with men. And I translate that here in Paris, and I'm 99% of the time the first teacher that has ever told a man to start singing in their head voice. To me, it's transformational, and it's essential.
When you, I know it's the same. I mean, it's really the same for me. But someone was saying, I don't remember who it was, but they were saying that that it sounds like weaker. It sounds. Was it? Who was it? Was it? It was all of you probably. Edward, was that you?
I think it was me. I think, I'm in a bit of a similar situation to Michael too. I think, obviously when I was younger, I was a high boy soprano, and you're used to this kind of like, this like pure ping sound in your mind, and you listen to these beautiful baritone voices, and they have this amazing flip from like a really deep rich sound to this, what I consider in my mind to be this like very clear, like very head voice forward falsetto. And I think like not being able to be outside of yourself, you're only experiencing what's happening in your head. So for me, I kind of like try to connect to that boy soprano. I try to connect to the baritone, but that's not necessarily my voice, and I have to like readjust my thinking about how I approach it. And I do get into a mental situation where I'm like, oh, I can't do this. And I it's a mix of mental, it's a mix of like what you're used to doing in the past versus what you're hearing. And it's a combination of all of those things, I think, that you go through emotionally in the 3 minutes you're doing that one single exercise, because when you're performing on stage, when you're in a character, that all goes away too. Like I feel like you build the story and you use that story, and to kind of that ping just comes through. But like when you're trying to hone the task, and when you're trying to, and you do that because you want it to be seamless in those moments, and that's why you do it. But it's the monster inside your head, it's your perception of others, it's perception of what's happened in the past. Like I've gone through a long change. My voice has changed over the last 10 years that I've been working with Donna. I'm a lot older now. I sing different songs because I'm a different actor now than I used to be. So it's a culmination of all of those kind of things for me.
So Matthew, as the newest student to Donna recently, can you tell us a little bit about the difference that you've had in how you're approaching your voice now with Donna, and what insights you've had around that?
Well, I think what's interesting, Michael was talking about the taboo with the falsetto. I've always sung in my falsetto. I mean, since I was in middle school, really, and I just had all these teachers who would mostly tell me, never sing in your falsetto. Oh, you sing with too much falsetto. So then I'd always sing in chest voice, and then I would end up pushing, and they would just be kind of, not very good. To me, it's a relief to work with someone like Donna who encourages the lighter sounds, because it really helps it helps the bottom, and it's it's all connected. And I think people think, well, oh, it's two different voices, so it can't possibly connect, or it can't possibly come together, but it does. So.
Well, and the reality is, it's the same mechanism, right, Donna? Like, it's the same set of vocal folds. So while there are register balances, it's the same actual instrument. It's like having high notes on a saxophone versus the low notes on a saxophone. I don't know if that's the instrument to use as the example, but.
And one of the things that I always say to my students, like Matthew said about the falsetto, if he wants to sing the falsetto, if he wants to sing along with, Celine Dion, go for it. Do you know what I mean? Whatever. Everybody should be able to make whatever sounds they want to be able to make. I believe you can make practically any sound healthily. So when you have a teacher saying, oh no, don't ever make that sound because that's going to ruin your voice. Well, if it's a constricted sound and you're screaming, yeah, okay, maybe that's going to ruin your voice. But if you want to sing in the falsetto, sing in the falsetto. Why not? Explore that part of it and just do it for fun, whatever. I want to sing in a soprano key. I want to sing a soprano song. Go ahead and do that. As long as whatever one is singing isn't constrictive. Now, if you're making a sound and you love making that sound and it's tight in the throat, of course you don't want to do that. That's going to ruin something, right? But now, on the other hand, let's say you make that one sound for one effect in one role that you're doing or whatever, and maybe it's a little not quite, whatever, and it's once, fine, you probably won't kill yourself with it. Now, I had a student who had to do, what's the name of the Avenue Q guy? Who does
Monster.
Yes. So that was tricky because you have to be able to make that sound, do 8 shows a week, and not be able to, and not ruin your voice with it. And there is a way to do it. And I do have to say that I am not great at teaching that particular sound. He figured it out, and that was fabulous. But I was like, I'll do the best I can, but I'm not sure how to get this sound without the constriction. But again, part of the exploration. I always say to my student, all right, tell me the sound you want. I will help you get there, whatever the sound is, falsetto oriented, chest voice oriented, whatever. There's a way to do it. And if I don't know how, I will figure it out. Because isn't that what we're supposed to do? Just kind of figure out how to get there? No, the only thing that I'm going to emphasize that I always emphasize is everybody. Everybody is an individual. This is my third season of my YouTube channel, and you will see how I treat everybody differently. Now, there are some similarities that I do in terms of exercises, whatever, but I don't have a lesson plan. I go with what's going on at the moment because the person at the moment is an individual. Not only are they an individual, and I'm not going to teach them the same way as the person before or the person after, but that day they are different than the day before, than 2 years ago, than 5 years from now. So it's the individuality. It's every person discovering their own voice. It's my opening the door so you can discover what you do to sing. I never tell you, feel this, do that, do that. Sometimes I'll give you a mechanical exercise, move your tongue, whatever, but that's only a means to get there. Then when you actually sing, each person has to take the responsibility of, all right, that's what I'm doing. Oh, all right, that seems to feel good. I'll do that. Oh, I like that sound. Okay, I'll go there. So it's really an individual thing, and that's I emphasize. So all of you people out there watching, when you see all of these YouTube channels and you try these exercises from that student, or you try this teacher who said do X, Y, Z, if it doesn't work for you, don't do it. If it works for you, go to town. So, just know that you have to figure out, yeah, that works. No, that doesn't work.
And one last question for you on that line. When, we were talking a little while ago about how inside of myself, inside of my own body, there's something that I feel that's different than what's coming out and how it's being interpreted by the outside. What are some ways that people can, some concrete ways that people can determine, like, does this work for me when they're home by themselves? Obviously, if you're with a teacher, they can help you with that. But if you're home by yourself, like, what are you looking for? Like, how do I know if that works for me?
The most important thing, the thing to tune into, does it feel constricted in the throat? Does it feel tight? Does it feel like something is closing down in your throat? Now, there are subtleties to that, but the out and out constriction, everybody can feel that. We don't want that, obviously. Now, is it a little bit constricted? That's a little bit more difficult to tell. I'll tell you one way you could do that. If you're singing whatever, you're singing your songs, whatever, if you think it's great, but you sing a song 2, 3, 4 times and it feels tired, something's wrong. So if you're saying, I love that sound, that's great, sounds belty, I don't feel that it hurts, but you try it 3 and 4 times, no, there's something wrong. Secondly, if you sing something and let's say high notes are easy for you, and then after you sing that the high notes are no longer easy, or conversely, you sing something, low notes are easy for you, low notes are no longer easy, another indication that whatever you did is probably not correct. Now, in terms of the sound, in terms of if the sound feels good, you think on the inside it sounds good, but like Michael said, it feels like it's disconnected. I would say sing that phrase on your whatever recording device you have and play it back. So in terms of checking out the smoothness, when it feels like you're singing when it feels like that, you have to listen back and say, oh, wait a minute, it didn't feel like that. Or if as a female you think it doesn't sound belty enough, I don't think that's belty enough, like that's not a real belt, that's when you have to record it and listen back, because it may sound like a real out and out belt, but it may not feel that way to you, and it may not sound that way on the inside. So what you're going to do is you're going to end up putting more chest voice in there when it doesn't need it. So those are a couple of ways, a couple of things to think about when you're working on your own.
That's really helpful. Great. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. And
so much.
Thanks for being a part of it and being in the studio and all of that.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
It's a lot of fun. Thank you.
I'm going to stop.
Thanks for watching Donna Reid Talks Voice. If you have any questions for me about this episode, please visit my website and click Contact.